So celebrations for the 60th anniversary have gotten underway, and on the 23rd of November, the BBC gave us a very special episode of the Daleks in colour. Now, there were a couple of changes that were made to this, not just the fact that they colorised a story that was in black and white, but they have also shortened down a 7-episode story down into just about 75-minute long feature-length film. This means that there were a lot of changes done in terms of editing, in terms of story beats, and so I wanted to come on here and have a chat about my thoughts on the episode. First of all, I wanted to talk about the editing. I thought that overall it was pretty good at keeping the main story beats in the same places. It managed to keep it flowing and it really helped move the story quickly, where in the 7 episodes it may have slowed down a bit because of how long they had. Unfortunately, that did mean that it became a little unclear what was happening at a couple of moments. The main one that sort of jumps to mind is the lift scene where they are escaping, where Ian is in the Dalek. It kind of jumped around a little bit. It wasn't sure if it was a montage, if it was in the past looking forward. There were lots of different things going on and it just wasn't very clear. Alternatively, they did use this same kind of editing in other scenes and it really helped push them along. So in some places it was used really well. So for example, when Susan was running back to the TARDIS to go and get the anti-radiation drugs, it really works well because it broke up the really long scene of her running back through the forest, and it interspliced it with scenes of Ian and Barbara, of the Daleks, and it just jumped back and forth a little bit and it gave it that little bit of sense of urgency that she has to get back to the TARDIS and she's trying to get there as fast as she can. So overall, I think it was pretty good, the editing. I just feel that there were some areas where it just moved too quickly and it lost a little bit of the pacing and made it a bit confusing, especially if you've never seen the Daleks. If you've only watched New Who and you're watching this as like an introduction to classic Who, then it can make it seem like the stories are really confusing, or you're not quite sure what's happening. So I felt that they kind of did the story a bit of a disservice with some of their editing choices. The second thing I wanted to have a talk about was the music. I think that they added in a lot more orchestration. You could and a lot more sort of emphasis and bringing out the emotion of the scenes, which did help in some of the scenes. However, I felt that it didn't always match what was happening, especially with the set or the tone of the scene. Sometimes the music would blare in and it just kind of felt a bit too much for what was needed. The stories back then tended to be a bit more muted. Well, the scenery and things like that tended to be a bit more muted, and the black and white effect of the filming back then helped with that. So with the music blaring in, it just kind of didn't quite match it. The final thing I wanted to have a talk about was the whole point of this special, which is the colorization itself. I think it did help bring a vibrancy to it. It really helped bring the characters to life, especially the Thralls. They really had a lot more going for them. You could see the colors of their outfits, and so things like that was really good. But the whole point of this story and of this planet that they go to, Skaro, is that it's dead, and it didn't really feel like that. It worked with the city having colours and being empty was really good, but the forest, which is supposed to be a stone forest, felt really alive. It did not feel dead as it did when you watch the original black and white episode. So I feel like it really helped in some areas but hindered in others. Another area it really hindered in was the long shots. If you look at the shots of the city, it looks like a model. I mean, it's a model anyway. You know that back then that's what they would have used, but it's really highlighted with the colour because the background of the skyline is really obviously a painting. In the black and white episode, it's not as obvious because it is in black and white, so they could get away with it. It hid those little inconsistencies and those limitations back then. Oh, I nearly forgot the cardboard cutout Daleks. I love those. I've always loved them. Ever since I've watched the original episode, I thought it was fantastic that that's how they dealt with that. And it's you can tell in the black and white episode, but it's not as obvious. it stuck out like a sore thumb to me, and I knew they were there, so I don't know if that was true for anybody who wasn't aware that there would be cardboard cutout Daleks in the back. But oh my goodness, it just I laughed. I laughed when I saw them. It was just so funny. I couldn't take my eyes away from the fact that there were in the back several outlines of Daleks and the shadows of the cardboard. It was really obvious. So my final thoughts on the Daleks in colour. I think it was a nice gimmick of a story, but I wouldn't watch it again like that. I would go back and watch the black and white episode. The original black and white episode, I'd probably give a 7 out of 10. It's a really good story, really good introduction to one of the most well-known villains in Doctor Who, and it's got the element of science in there, which is what the whole thing of Doctor Who. It started off as a history and science sci-fi show. So you've got the science of static electricity in there, which is really cool. It's got some really good interactions of the Doctor and companions. Ian has some really good moments to shine through. Barbara's not too much of a damsel in distress. There's a couple of moments where she is, as always, but she has some moments to shine. And Susan has a couple of moments as well herself where she gets to stand up to the Doctor a little bit and sort of put him in his place. And so, yeah, I really like it. But this special, I think I would drop that maybe to a 5 out of 10, because there was so much cutting of so many, like, it just felt really choppy and unclear at moments. There were some moments where it was good that they cut it up a little bit, but overall I felt that there were too many moments where it was confusing as to what was happening, the lift scene being probably the most egregious of that. And I think the attack on the city with the Thals and the Doctor and Ian and Barbara, that also was a bit all over the place. I'd look down, like, you know, for a second to check something, or you know, I'd go to blow my nose or something like that, look back up and I'll be like, what is happening? And that element of it just took away a bit too much from me. So yeah, watch it, don't watch it, let me know what you thought of it. Have you seen the story before? Was this your first time watching a classic Who story? Let me know.